So you're sitting there scrolling through endless subwoofer listings, wondering if you should spend a few $100s on a big box that promises to shake your apartment walls, or if that money would be better spent on something else in your system. You've probably heard the hype about deep, room-filling bass, and the fear of ending up with a piece of equipment that either roars too much for your modest living room, or just sits silent because it can't keep up with your main speakers. The big question is the SVS PB3000R Evolution a realistic option for your space, or is it another overpromised piece that ends up gathering dust? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of room where the PB3000 actually shines. This is a 13-inch driver subwoofer in a ported enclosure, meaning it's built to move a lot of air and produce that low-frequency rumble you hear in movies. In a typical 500-square-foot home theater, or a larger living room with a decent amount of floor space, you'll start to notice the difference the moment you play a bass-heavy track, or a movie explosion. The sub size lets it generate serious SPL enough to feel the bass in your chest without the distortion you get from smaller units trying to push beyond their limits. Now, if you live in a small studio apartment, a bedroom, or any space where you're worried about neighbor complaints, the PB3000 might be a bit of an overkill. Its ported design means it throws a lot of low end into the room, and that can translate into thumping that seeps through floorboards. In practice, that could mean you need to keep the volume lower than you'd like, or you might even need to add acoustic treatments to keep the bass from becoming a nuisance. So, my first rule of thumb: match the sub's capacity to the volume of the room. Bigger rooms appreciate the extra output, tighter rooms might feel overwhelmed. One of the practical strengths I've seen people point out after reading a handful of forum threads and user experiences is the sub's built-in DSP and room calibration options. SVS gives you a smartphone app that lets you fine-tune the crossover, phase, and even apply EQ curves to match your specific listening environment. In real use, that means you can dial in a smooth blend with your main speakers rather than having a boombox effect where the bass feels detached. A friend of mine, who installed the PB3000 in his home theater, reported that after a quick calibration, his movie dialogue stayed crystal clear, while the action scenes boomed without muddying the mids. That sort of integration isn't just a marketing buzzword, it solves the common problem of subwoofer timing and phase issues that can make a system feel disjointed. Another practical consideration is the size and placement. The PB3000 measures roughly 20 inches tall, 20 inches wide, and almost 30 inches deep. That's a substantial footprint, so you need a solid piece of furniture, or a dedicated subwoofer platform. In my own testing, placing it against a wall helped boost the low-frequency response, but an excessive distance from the front wall started to thin out the bass. Also, because it's ported, the front grille isn't just a decorative element, it's part of the acoustic design. Keep it clear of any objects that could block the port, or you'll notice a sudden dip in output around the 45 Hz range. It's a small detail, but one that turns a decent sub into a great one. On the flip side, the PB3000 does have a couple of trade-offs that matter once you've actually got it out of the box. One issue that crops up in a few owner reports is the weight. At around 50 pounds, moving it is not something you'll want to do frequently. If you plan on rearranging your listening space often, the heft can become a logistical headache. Also, while the sub's built-in amplifier is powerful, it does generate a noticeable amount of heat during extended high-volume sessions. In a hot summer apartment, you might notice the sub's outer panel getting warm to the touch after a marathon movie night. That's not a failure, but it's a signal to keep the ventilation space clear, and perhaps avoid placing it in a cramped cabinet. Let's talk about who should definitely consider the PB3000. If you're a home theater enthusiast who's already invested in quality main speakers, say a pair of floor-standing or bookshelf units that can handle mid-range and high frequencies with authority, and you want that extra depth without stepping into the territory of monstrous, studio-grade subs, this model fits nicely. It also works well for gamers who crave that tactile feedback during explosions or low-frequency rumble in racing games. The DSP integration means you can set up a preset for gaming that pushes the bass just enough to feel immersive without drowning out other sound cues. Conversely, if your primary listening goal is music and you prefer a tight, controlled low end that doesn't dominate the mix, or if you're on a tighter